Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves. Super excited today to have Lisa Kent, CIO and Director for the City of Houston, Melissa Kraft, CIO for the City of Frisco, and Derek Williams, CTO and Innovation Strategist at Dell Technologies. Welcome to the Public Sector Show by TechTables.
Thanks for having us.
Melissa, for those who don't know you, give us a quick intro.
Hi, I'm Melissa Kraft. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the City of Frisco. I've been there a little bit over 2 years, and prior to that, I was the CIO for Dallas County. Been in local government, federal, private sector, 20 plus years. So glad to be here today.
Love it. Derek?
Yes, Derek Williams. Thank you for having me. I'm with Dell. I'm a Chief Strategist for State and Local Government. Fairly new to Dell. I joined back in February of this year. Prior to that, I spent about 2 decades on the public side with the state of Louisiana. I started as a programmer and moved through a number of positions, ultimately being lucky enough to culminate as the state CIO. I'd also been a partner in a private IT company for about 15 years. And my original field of study, I was a computer scientist, and my postgraduate work was as a researcher in AI and machine learning, but that was back before anybody cared about it. It served me now.
The market is now hot, just in time for you, Derek.
Yes.
Lisa?
Yeah, Joe, thanks for having me back. I am Lisa Kent, CIO for City of Houston. I've been here approaching my 10-year anniversary next summer. Prior to this role, I worked in the aviation, healthcare, and technology sectors, and I am a diehard Tennessee Volunteer fan. Go Vols.
Lisa, I think you're in your office right now. We have to do this. So the basketballs, those who are watching on video, this is from the 2023 Houston Live Podcast Tour. We did go in 24, but we've got Miss Lisa Kent. She actually has a matching ball in her office, which...
Do you want to see it?
We cannot see it. I can't see it. Maybe it is on camera. My window got a little short, but Bert, Deputy CIO for Infrastructure, got you a nice case, which is totally awesome. Look. Yep, let's bring this over here.
I'm going to bring it out and show it to you. He framed it for me.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
We fancy.
Feel slighted over
If
here.
I may add, Lisa's also a legend for a lot of us women CIOs, leading the way. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Feel really honored to collaborate with you today, too. So
I look forward to working with you more.
Very excited. The podcast is done. We brought everyone together. I'm just going to turn this off, and this will be the shortest one. No, we'll kick off with Lisa. So you've been on the podcast twice, episode 147 and 205. Covered a wide range of topics from breaking down organizational silos to driving technology adoption across, I still believe it's 23 lines of business for Houston, across emergency management, emergency infrastructure, natural disasters. It's been almost about a year since you've been on. What's the biggest change or development in Houston IT that listeners should be aware of?
Right now, we're deep into World Cup preparation, so Houston is super excited about getting to host some of those games here next summer. And one of the big projects, this has been a multi-year engagement, but we're finally getting into that last few miles to get done on our network redesign. Corford, you mentioned him earlier. Bert is our Deputy CIO for Infrastructure, and he has nicknamed this project From Frankenstein to Adonis. And it's really getting rid of a lot of legacy nastiness and creating a real next-gen network that is improving resilience and security capacity, all those things that we need for a thriving city to operate. We're still doing some of that organizational stuff. The City of Houston did an efficiency study, and we did some pretty major consolidations of IT, the largest of which this year is the Houston Police Department. So migrating fully into the central IT org. It's a big task. And the other thing that I think is a lot more fun and impactful really to all of our business customers. We've been experimenting with Fusion, where we're driving those technical IT personnel from our shop onto these matrix teams where they're directly aligned with business SMEs and co-located out where the business environment is. And so we started with what we call public services. So think 311 and all of those back office systems that tie into it, like garbage pickup or anything that's reported about streets, traffic lights, potholes, things related to heavy trash pickup or illegal dumping, those kinds of systems. And we've had some really good success with helping move from that longer process of waterfall to real day-to-day agile ideating and observing, hey, here are the barriers that the business is experiencing. So we're expanding that. This year, we're working on building that for public safety as well as permitting, and then hopefully in the near future for operational technology and some other areas.
A quick follow-up question. I know I'm the host, so I get to ask these, but Melissa, I have a follow-up, and Derek too. As you're going from team to team, how are you getting the buy-in and collaboration to drive forward the new model?
With the fusion teams?
Yeah.
I think it's about results. So at first you have to entice the business with what's in it for them, right? And there's lots of things where they have particular problems that when we can acknowledge that we understand that this is a barrier to their progress or accomplishing their goals, they're listening, but they really listen and get interested when they begin to see it work. So that's why we started with one. And big shout out to Summer Shao. She was, until just last Friday, she was the deputy CIO for enterprise applications. And Summer, like you, Derek, crossed over from that public sector, public service world into the private sector. Last Friday was officially her last day with us. So that was a big loss for our team, but super proud of her. She's been on Joe's podcast multiple times. But Summer was the one that helped us really drive that forward. And candidly, what keeps it going is when the business sees that, hey, it works and it gets them what they need faster. And in many cases, provides things to them that they didn't even know how to ask for yet, but we could see the challenge that they were dealing with and put things into place.
Thank you for sharing that. That is awesome. Yes, love Summer. She's amazing. She's actually, for those who don't watch the podcast on video, she is actually on the cover of the podcast. So if you go to Apple and Spotify, she's on the Apple podcast, and I have not changed it. That was from the Commodore Perry Estates from our podcast interview. And it's just such a great photo. I told Summer, I might not ever change it. Like, not for 10 years. It's so good. There's just like a perfect shot in the library that we did it in. And anyways,
I think that's
super,
awesome.
Yeah, it was great. And then super random for those who, we had Karika Lakey on, the CIO for the city of Austin. She got married at the Commodore Perry Estates, which is crazy. So she was like, hey, I recognize that room. I was like, oh yeah, no, we did the podcast there. She's like, I got married there. I'm like, that's crazy. It was fabulous estate. Yeah, it was really great. Melissa, we'll jump over to you. So, as you mentioned, CIO of City of Frisco, which has become known as, I think you mentioned like Sports City USA, hosting everything from the PGA, not the World Cup. Also,
we're hosting a couple of camps. Two camps.
City of Frisco still in it. Still on it.
Yes.
Yeah, still on it. You got an upcoming Universal Studios. Can you just walk us through where's the City of Frisco today? And then we'll go a little bit later deeper.
Awesome. I think one of our key focus areas is around really data and AI for all. I say for all because one of the first things I did was hire a data program manager over our data, right? Data first so we can look at AI for the long term. So being able to focus on the people side and bring up some data literacy training, data analysis, data processes, in addition to doing the tech side as well, being able to inventory our data, catalog our data, understand the current state of data maturity, because really in the effort to push those boundaries with AI, you need good data to do that. So being able to start to build that data foundation, not only on the technology side, but on the people side, I think it's been really our focus over the last year and a half. Our city manager's office, even the mayor, we want to be the venture capital of the Midwest. In order to do that, they want City of Frisco to be a test bed. In order to do that, you have to have a really strong foundation on the data side, on the resilience side, and cybersecurity side. So I think that's been in focus.
I love that. Did you tell them you also need to be big on the budget side too, with a B? Budget money.
Yes, and they have been supportive. I will say I'm very fortunate in that regard. We actually started a small technology innovation fund to specifically pilot certain case uses. So we started off really small with a couple of departments and learn, iterate to try to standardize our playbook. So it's been neat.
What are some of your favorite use cases? Like one or two that are just top of mind right now?
It really has to do with traffic. Sometimes we're rehauling or reconstructing our main street, a lot of it in preparation for World Cup. So we also, fun fact, we also host the National Soccer Museum too as well. So we know that's going to be an area where people would want to visit and venture out as well. So that's been, I would say, one of our key focus areas.
Thank you. I was just thinking, I don't know, there might have to be a soccer ball up there. Just saying. I don't know. Maybe.
You should come visit. I was actually there yesterday hosting a tech event for CIOs. It's revamping. Everything's getting revamped in preparation for that, in preparation for downtown.
I love it. Yeah, now that all my friends live in Texas, not all my friends, a lot of friends I have live in Texas, and I live in Southern California. So I think audience size, I want to say it's got to be close to 30% of my overall audience resides in the state of Texas, which makes sense. I think like it's California, Texas, Florida. I think actually maybe Arizona is probably number 3 there. But anyway.
You have a lot of progression in a lot of those areas when it comes to technology.
Yeah, technology.
And we all talk to each other. So
yeah, Texas folks are pretty friendly. I always like making it out there and going to all the different cities. So Derek, you're also new to the podcast. Super excited to have you on. I did not pay Melissa at all to just throw you an alley-oop in sports terms on the data and AI side. But if you just want to bring us just, I think a little bit of a deeper background on just the work that you did at the state of Louisiana, specifically around the cost allocation model that's still in use today, and then how that's leading into how you think about modernization data, and we'll take it from there.
I had an interesting career at the state. Like I said, I started out as a programmer, eventually worked into management, and became an IT director over at the Department of Environmental Quality. That was about 10 years ago now. And at the time, the decision was made to consolidate the executive branch into what's called the Office of Technology Services. All IT, all personnel, everything technology was required to flow through them, is required to flow through them, except for a few outliers, elected official agencies and things like that. But I was one of 3 that got tapped to kind of lead that effort. And as part of that, we had to do a whole lot of work. I oversaw all the infrastructure consolidation. We had 2 data centers that we owned and managed. We also moved to 100% cost recovery. So anyone that does that knows politically how fun that can be. Yeah, so I got to develop from scratch because no one else knew what to do. And I had a little bit of background with it, but I built a cost allocation model that they do still use today. It's about 1,000 node cost pool model that's self-weighting and does a lot of cool stuff. Luckily, I have a background in programming, so I was able to write that and the billing system and a bunch of the reporting. So yeah, it's been an interesting piece, but it's turned out to be very valuable. And now that I go around and get to talk to all these people that are doing this, so I can tell them all the things not to do usually.
I love that. Yeah, go for it, Melissa.
I'll give you an example too. I was more focused on the soccer ball and the upcoming sports, right? So we live in it here in Frisco, but one thing that we leveraged was for our 911 operations center, we were able to use an AI tool that helped them with training. So based on how they answered, the AI tool will then start to trigger certain responses and try to hone in on the area where they may get better exposure and experience in. So we saw and gain operation efficiencies. It's not to say that we don't train our dispatchers. They still have the trainers, but it helps supplement them and also gives them the courage to do a dry run before they start answering those calls. I think that was one of the AI tools for operational efficiencies. And I think another one that's pretty neat, we call it an AI transcription service, where this is mainly for our traffic. This is where I was going at with before, where people would get calls in and it would go into a call flow or go into voicemail. Obviously, they couldn't attend it 24/7. So we put AI on top of that to be able to pull those transcriptions, do automatic summarization and group it into themes, and also automatically email and assign people with that too. So I guess it supplements. I know, Lisa, you guys have a way more expensive 311 system. That's Rockstar. We're mid-size, so we have our My Frisco app, and it does some automatic workflow routing, but this really takes it to that next level. So couple that with this, I think we were able to see a decrease in processing time by over 40%. And a fun one, and I don't know if you're looking at this for World Cup, Lisa, one of the things we're working with our parks, we already have our prototype developed, the AI avatar. So we're already launching it in one of our parks to be able to use it as a guide, but also talk about historical artifacts. You pull up your phone, you hit the QR code, It's conversational. It actually uses one of our assistant directors from the organization. She talks way better than I do. And as part of that, we're able to garner, why are they visiting? What are they looking for? But also, one of the things we were looking at, being able to translate into multiple languages as well.
Yes.
So with this tool, again, it's a small pilot. With this tool, we're able to use that framework and scale it out for the watch parties. And because we do know we're hosting at least 2 events. And again, the band camps too. So it's going to be a large influx of people in addition to Universal Studios opening up. So being able to use some of those tools for better visibility, I think it's really been key for us.
Melissa, those were really cool use case examples. It's funny, Microsoft was literally just talking to us about the avatar example just a couple of days ago and asking Houston about whether or not we're pursuing that for some of the World Cup venues, which right now, candidly, we're not. But I think it's a great idea for those outdoor venues and parks and even city streets where we have some of those kiosks that the avatar could be loaded on. So those are excellent ideas.
Yeah. So Melissa, just in the words of my friend Ryan Murray out in Arizona, I just want to double click on a few things you said. So multiple languages, really great. Recently interviewed Bob Leake, who's the CIO for Clark County in Nevada. Fun fact, there are 12 Clark counties in the US, so this is the Clark County in Nevada. That's his number one use case is right now. I think there's 20, he was telling me there's 28 different languages that get spoken in Las Vegas, just with all the tourism and everything. And I think Tagala is like pretty high up there. And so, yeah, having the multiple language translation is a big one. And then the training piece is another great use case, whether that's like a custom GPT or something else. Super fun. Derek, love to bring you in. I know you're there in the hotel. I know you're there. Yeah, love to bring you in. You're hearing a lot of conversations right now, right? So moved out of the state of Louisiana and now at Dell, traveling around. You're hearing state agencies, local government, probably maybe even some higher education. Just love to hear around how are you coaching or leading or having those conversations with CIOs around what is possible? What does that art of the possible look like as everyone is just learning and navigating right now?
Oh man, you said the buzzword art of the possible. Yeah, there's a running joke about how much I hate the term art of the possible, by the way. People are hesitant to bring it up around me. And hopefully that the other CIOs on here are getting a chuckle about that because everyone beats you over the head with art of the possible. But a lot of times in the CIO role, what that means is things that we can't actually deliver yet. No, it has been a ton of fun getting the bigger perspective, stepping out of just Louisiana and seeing that almost all of the problems that we suffered, everyone else suffers from too. And there's a surprising lack of communication, I think, a lot of times between state CIOs. We go to NASCIO once or twice a year. And that's a lot of times kind of those and a few other events are the majority of times that we actually get to sit down and talk to each other. But AI and cyber, still the hot topics. AI is on everyone's mind. And a lot of people are sick of it, I think, to some degree, but it is interesting watching the transformative nature of it. And there's a weird shift happening right now that we're seeing everywhere. And a lot of people, I think, especially on the business side, think about AI as a solution. And people will tell me, I want AI. To do what? But this weird kind of idea that it's an IT-owned thing. The role of the CIO is starting to change. And it's a weird spot. And I empathize with the sitting CIOs here because it's moving away from the old kind of mindset where he is a pure support function and the role of IT is to control technology and say, this is what you can and can't do, and this is how we're going to lock it down. Now these tools like AI, they have such a broad spectrum of what they can do. It is not, here's email or a thing that does a specific task. A lot of these LLM bots and these RAG chat bots and these agentic bots that they're building, they can do so much. It's transitioning over into a bigger and bigger gray area where the CIOs are getting more toward the business side, and there's a lot of overlap there, but also you have to move toward this idea of building these secure sandboxes to let the business side play with the tools and develop what they need it to do. You can no longer just come in and say, this is it, this is how you have to use it. And there's a lot of push and pull going on out there, and it is not an easy problem to solve.
And for those who are listening on the podcast, art of the possible, I did put that in quotes because I did meet with Derek before and he had already mentioned that to me, which I thought would be pretty funny. For those who know, who are longtime listeners, you know the name of the business. So the brand is Tech Tables, but the name of the actual business name is Levity Media LLC. And so levity for lightness, fun. We tend to have that on the podcast. So I had to, you just teed it up with the art of the possible, Derek.
Perfect. I appreciate it.
Lisa, there was a pretty recent MIT study that said that 95% of corporate AI projects fail. I know that's different than public sector, and I don't actually know what the sample size of that was. So just audience, I am aware, bear with me, don't kill me. But I am curious I'd love to learn how the city of Houston is thinking about AI, the processes. I love what you had earlier about the fusion teams, the matrix teams, and how are you helping to guide the business leaders or even just partner with them for just to really find out what are those best use cases that actually solve a business problem for Houstonians?
That's a great question. So I'll play off a couple of things that both you and Derek have said. First of all, there is a Gartner report out. I don't know that it's 90%, but it's darn high, at least 75%, maybe more, of those AI initiatives fail. And much of it is because the user that initiated it said exactly what Derek said of, I want AI, but it didn't necessarily solve the problem that they were trying to solve or not have enough thought put into it or the right people collaborating to help it be truly successful. So there's a lot of effort going into figuring out how do you vet those use cases and pick the ones that have the greatest opportunity for success. The other thing, Derek, that you said that I totally relate to is that we can't have IT in this mode of just really more out of fear and risk management of just trying to control how this amazing technology is deployed. And it's come so fast and so furious that many of our business units are out ahead of us and have begun using it. Now, we were very early adopters in our cybersecurity program. Dr. Christopher Mitchell, who is our CISO, he's an amazing, forward-thinking rock star of a CISO. And so we started using AI and many of those cyber tools very early on, but we have been slower to deploy it in other parts of the business, trying to figure out what is that governance process. So in my opinion, we actually are a little bit behind on that. And so some of our business partners, particularly in public works and like in the water management area and aviation, are farther down that path of leveraging that out in the business. Much like what Melissa said, we did also dabble early on in the 311 realm of trying to discern in natural language what some of the customers were seeking and to peel them off into a bot. It wasn't particularly successful that first go round. And I think that part of it was data, and which is the bane of most failed AI projects. But also the tools have evolved and have gotten better. And so that's one that we will be circling back and trying to decrease some of that call volume for people who just aren't willing to use the mobile app, but they're going into the call queue. But so we created an AI governance version 1.0, and then just recently, in the last 3 months or so, we updated to a 2.0, and we're getting our arms around what does that vetting process look like. Now, one of the people who couldn't be here today, Dumenin, the CIO for Harris County, which is also part of the greater Houston region, they've done a really good job. They partnered with both Gartner as well as some other of the big manufacturers to create that vetting and intake process and that governance structure, but still not holding the business back, letting some really winners get the money and the funding and the resources that they need to take off. So that's really where the city of Houston is looking to go so that we can enable our business partners to leverage it as quickly as possible.
I get that exact question about the 95%. I heard it yesterday on a panel, as a matter of fact, and it comes up a lot, but just generally these stumbling points of AI, and it's something that we've put a lot of time into at Dell, and I've been so fortunate to go across the country talking to people. And it is funny that exact things come up over and over, and I'd say there are 3 categories, and Lisa nailed the biggest one, which is data. So many people fall down because data governance, I think, took a back seat for so long in so many organizations. And all of a sudden now it's the most important thing. Like the data asset for state and local government is now one of their most important commodities. The idea of, hey, we have all this data in silos, and suddenly there is a tool, a technology that the more data you can give it from disparate sources that is good data, the better it will perform and the more insights you can give. Now there's kind of this mad scramble of like, how do you share the data? How do you ensure that the data is solid? Everyone says you garbage in, garbage out, but it's much worse than that in AI. It's if you don't give it good data, you get wrong answers very fast and a very high cost. I think a lot of people that have already consolidated maybe have a head start on that because they have technical mechanisms to do data sharing, and they're probably used to doing data sharing agreements. But that's been by far the major hang up. The other two we've seen are people struggling with the initial build out of infrastructure and platform and having the personnel upskilled to run them. I think the business side is so used to being like, hey, I found this solution, and IT saying, sure, I can go spin up a VM or a container and set up a web server and a database. And that's been the standard for so long that now they come along, hey, I need you to spin up AI. This is a different tech stack. This is different infrastructure. This is different platforms. This is a different set of skills. We don't have that. And there is a major initial investment that has to go into that unless you just have a one-off hosted service. But the people that are doing one-off hosted services tend to end up regretting that because then, as I said, down the road, the way you make these things more impressive is to bring in more and more data. And so siloing out your AI is a terrible long-term strategy. Mm-hmm. The last thing I would add on that is just the other thing that Lisa hit on as well is this idea that people just want AI, and you hear it over and over. And I've had that conversation so many times with people ask me, what's the best thing I should be doing in AI? And you have to tell them, just take AI off the table. It's a technology like any other. Your top priority of challenges for the business are your top challenges for the business. Go through those, work with IT, and see if AI might be a solution for one of them. It may be a good idea. It may not, but that doesn't change what your needs are. You should never do I call it the AI FOMO. People are just like, I need AI for the sake of it. And it's just like the ROI conversation kind of goes out the window, or people aren't up to speed enough to know how to really calculate ROI on AI projects. And so I used to go around as a CIO, and I had about an hour and a half presentation where I would just sit down with the C-suite of the agencies and walk them through a high level. This is what AI is. This is where it's useful. This is where it's not so useful. This is how you should approach it. These are the things you should watch out for. And that helped quite a bit, I think. But just getting people used to AI at all levels, from the end users to procurement to legal, all of that has to come together. It's a big problem to solve. It's such a big shift. I don't think people realize how fundamental it actually is.
And if I can key off that, Derek, too, I think it's not just data, it's data permissions and how you have it configured. Going back to your foundation, I know one of the things in Frisco, we've been working on zero trust for years now. And part of that is ensuring the accessibility rights, user groups, all of that stuff's cleaned up, because as soon as you start using AI, whether it's Copilot hooked into your SharePoint, you're going to quickly see what people have rights to, what they don't, what may inadvertently get access if you don't have your, going back to the foundation too. I know one of the first things for City of Frisco, it's let's do an AI responsible use. Our city managers, we don't want to, like Lisa, I totally agree. We don't want to restrict people, but we still want to have boundaries. So we use automated mechanisms. We use Purview to do our data classification and some other tools since we're hybrid as well. And also with the responsible, if you want to use it for public, you want to use ChatGPT, go ahead, but don't use it for private data. So going back to that educational piece, and this is where the data program manager really spent the time training, not just IT, but outside of IT too, right? Because it feels like it should be co-ownership. IT shouldn't be leading these efforts per se. We're just there to make sure no one lands in the paper, right? So at least that's my goal. So I think it's definitely iterative, at least from a Frisco, City of Frisco perspective, because they want it now. They come back from a conference, but we do have a framework that we leveraged our project steering committee process to leverage some of, is it important? Is it to meet a regulatory requirement? Is it for operational efficiencies? Do you have the funding? What's your intended outcome? Who's all involved? Can it be scalable? Can more than one department use it? So we have these intake mechanisms that help with some of the filtering, but it's still a challenge. So especially if you see someone like utilities, hey, I want this, and they're like, all right, let's give them the tech survey. Let's look at it from a cyber perspective. It's an Internet of Things. Again, going back to that foundation, we have that network that's segmented. So they're using AI vision to do their pipe visibility checking things. That's really cool. It saves someone a lot of time. They have their outcomes and what their goals are. But it's hard to, and we're mid-sized, so I can't even imagine Houston. It sounds like you need a much more mature framework to be able to really hone in on that.
Derek, you said you hammered it just right before Melissa teed her up perfectly, but I want AI, right? And I think the lack of discovery kills anything, right? Cool. So what does I want AI mean? Tell me more about your business. Like, where is the bottleneck? Like, what does that look like? In my space, the version of I want AI is, hey, Joe, like from vendor partners, they'll go, hey, Joe, I want a podcast. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. What does that mean to you? It's the exact same thing. And so it's like going through that like discovery of figuring out what it actually means. Where is the pain? Just normally just like going through that discovery, almost that like just being a consultant and just going through asking those questions. Then you uncover like actually that's not an AI problem. That's just a workflow routing automation. Like there's no AI on top of that. Like you just need to do this. And here's a spread.
That's a very key point, though.
Yeah,
That is a really key point. And I see this all the time from AI to general modernization projects where so many business side people, and I'm obviously very defensive of the IT side here. I'm just going to keep throwing the business under the bus. But a lot of times they think that modernization means IT is going to come in and do a cloud migration or get new servers or write a new app. And you end up with a bunch of 21st century platforms running 20th century business processes. And so many times we have to go yell at people like, hey, you need to redo the business process as well. That is part of modernization. In fact, it is the most important and often most difficult part of modernization. It is not just the IT side, but I'm sure all the other CIOs on the call here have done that as well, where you go and it's, hey, what does this app need to do? You tell me, you're IT. That's what you all do, right? No, the technology there is there to enable the business. It is not the other way around. We're not here to tell you the business, but that's what I was saying earlier, that it seems to be shifting. And I think you used a very good word where it's like you come in and the CIO is now almost a consultant role on telling people, doing some deciphering of what a lot of this is and how it works. But it is, that's one of the things that I struggled with for 10 years in the consolidated environment, was just getting the business on board to understand this isn't something that IT comes in and just magically happens. It has to be a collaborative process. And Lisa laid a great framework with the way they run those agile sprints and bringing those teams in. And that's exactly what we ended up doing, by the way, and where we found success in it.
Yeah, and I can't emphasize more what you just said about the business being willing to modernize those business processes. That candidly, between data and bad business processes, those are really the two biggest things that cause big challenges in IT projects. Getting that partnership with the business leaders where they're willing to think outside the box about how to modernize the process is a huge part of the success.
It's actually a really great transition and dovetails very well to, I think generically we hear this, hey, workforce of the future, but really the role of the CIO. This is something behind the scenes that I've been talking to a lot of folks about. And the role, I think, is going through a pretty big change right now, just with so much technology. It's already changed, but I think the next 10 years is going to also evolve again. And Lisa, I think you had mentioned you're coming almost on 10 years in the city of Houston, which is so impressive.
Boggling. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you've navigated hurricanes, COVID, and 100 other things that aren't even on top of my head right now. I was curious, like, how has the actual job of a CIO evolved or changed over the last 10 years? And maybe what were some of the most surprising lessons that you've learned on the journey?
Some of it we've talked about, that IT has to be that business enabler that can gain the business partners' cooperation and partnership, right, to jointly be seeking how do we solve their problems. You just mentioned one of the biggest challenges, and what has been surprising in the last 2 or 3, 4 years is that dramatic increase in the pace of mainstream technology evolution. It has been mind-boggling for everyone, including IT people, of how do we leverage this for good, but not get clobbered by how it can be used in a bad way. And I think one of the things that has surprised me is that earlier on in my career was more willing to take chances. And I had an interesting conversation with one of my sons recently. Both my boys are out of college. They're working men now. And one of the things that the eldest was talking about, he works in logistics, and he was frustrated that his CIO and IT team had not unleashed the workforce to use Microsoft Copilot, the premium version. He was describing to me how he wanted to use it. This is a young person in their mid-20s, but who has a lot of passion and excitement about how he could do his job better and faster and put in fewer weekend and weeknight hours by using some of these automation tools that are mainstream now. And as he was describing this frustration, I realized, oh my goodness, I resemble that remark, that we were also in our IT organization hesitant, even though Microsoft didn't actually turn on Copilot Chat, which is the free version, until June of this year in the government environment. But even when that did come open, that was one of the things that we were still grappling with. Okay, we got to do one more finishing touch on the instruction to users about what not to put in there. And I realized that to some extent, we're moving too slowly and too cautious. So I think that's that balancing act that I need not only me, but the organization's pendulum to swing back a little bit more, willing to take some risks and to allow some things to go forward, but still have those guardrails to protect us, like what Melissa was explaining, protect you from the really big gotchas so that we're not hurting people, but we are absolutely enabling that business. And one other thing that I think is surprising, I was listening to a podcast recently, a leadership podcast by Andy Stanley, and his guest was Dr. Tim Elmore. Yeah, Andy's great. But this podcast was about leading Gen Zs and how differently they think and how frustrating it is for them when some of the other generations tend to be too cautious and not let them run and do and solve some of these problems. And I won't go into all the details, but the example that Elmore brought up was a NASA example back when they were working to put a man on the moon, and they didn't have the workforce, much like what Derek was saying about AI, they did not have the workforce that had all the computing skills that they needed. And so they did this full court press on the academia to recruit new graduates from college and people who had been studying this in school, but also had that fire in their belly to go use it and deploy it. And one of the examples that he gave was that NASA made an adjustment, and some of those folks that didn't have as much hands-on experience, albeit still new, those folks moved into more of a simulator supervisory role. And they had some very new graduates that were making the call. So the person, I didn't know this, I need to go back and read the book, but the person who actually made the go, no go decision on the moon mission was a 23-year-old, one of those computer phenoms. And so that's one of the things that's been, eye-opening for me, that, wow, we've got to work faster and harder to recruit some of those skill sets that will really help us in leveraging and deploying and maintaining some of these new technologies like AI.
I like your son. Also, plug for public sector. You should hire outside of public sector. All I'm saying, we should hire outside of public sector.
I will say though, to be fair, I mean there is, and everyone knows this on the state and local side. I used to be a young man with a technology gleam in my eye until public sector eventually beat that out of me and made me the jaded person I am today. But one of the things straddling both sides of the fence, it's wild when I first came to Dell to see this idea of we need to start this initiative and we're going to try this crazy project that we think may work. And it hits problems or failures and they go, okay, let's just reassess it. We're going to have to put more money here and we're going to have to do this. And are we going to continue or not? In the public sector, these things, you're using tax dollars, but the politics come into it at that level. And the stuff of I rolled this project out and it hit a stumbling point or a failure point and we had to reassess. Suddenly you're getting ripped apart in the paper. You're over at the legislature sitting at the table getting grilled by senators and representatives. And there is such pain that comes with that this expectation that every IT project should be on time, within budget, 100% successful, and anything less than that means that you are a failure. It's absolutely unrealistic. It's not how anyone works outside of the public, but it's a weird expectation that gets put on the public. And everyone knows too, the media a lot of times is very mean to people that work in the public sector. How many times have you heard like they're lazy? The people that I hired a bunch of people from the private sector when I was a CIO, and I put several of them in C-level positions, and they all told me the same thing. This is the hardest I have ever had to work in my life. The public sector and the workers there do not get enough credit for how good they are and the amount of time and effort that they put in. It was the single most frustrating thing I saw in the CIO role that just made me absolutely nuts. As you can tell now, huge pet peeve of mine. It's unrealistic expectations. And a lot of times people blame the public sector for behaving that way, but it's a result of the pressure that gets put on them and the way they're portrayed as well. And everyone has to own that. It's not a deficiency a lot of times in the way that those are run. It's just a result of how they get treated.
Yeah, Derek, I want to thank you for bringing that up. I will say that operating in the fishbowl and the level of scrutiny that public sector receives can be crushing to innovation and reasonable risk taking. And so you did a fantastic job of outlining that's one of the differences that the public sector, while the private sector definitely has oversight and monitoring, it is not the same level of scrutiny and to some extent even backlash if a political position is taken. So thank you for bringing that up.
I always tell people, I said, if you want to know what it's like, imagine that anyone in the public can put in a request for every email or message that you've ever sent internal, and imagine what that would look like if they read them. And everyone just sits there a minute and goes, oh, yeah. Imagine dealing with that all the time. Yeah, so it's praise to the public sector folks. They're the unsung heroes. They deserve more credit.
There's always hope. I think that especially with the newer generation, they're forcing that habit change, right? So I think focusing on development, internships, creating those opportunities, even if they're small wins, to be able to pilot, to test, and encourage a safe space where people can experiment and still keep it secure. I think that's the way to go. But I think it's true. It really starts at the top. I think having support from the mayor, from the city manager's office to be able to experiment and know that it's okay to invest in training and focus on not just team development, but individual development to get them where they need to get to. So as you're upskilling them, you're giving them the confidence to be able to test in those realms and parameters, but alongside partnering with those that are already doing it. Like I get my best ideas from the private sector. So I go to my fellow CIOs that are non-government. Okay, so how are you doing this and how we can maybe pivot that in a smaller incremental way, right? To be able to innovate. So I don't think government bodes well for big bang approaches at all. So incremental innovation, even if it's low hanging fruit, you gain trust, you implement, you pivot, you iterate, and you do it all over. And hopefully you have some sort of playbook that you can continue to build along the lines, right? It's really co-creating with those departments that want to do that, use that as a case use to be able to get to those bigger things like revamping your ERP system, which I never want to do again. But yeah.
Second,
I feel like we all need to get together and give Derek a hug for that.
I'll give you a virtual cheers.
Very happy now. I'll just say it has been awesome to me. I love my job. Honestly, and I am in awe when Lisa, she's did that for 10 years. When I stepped over to this side, like the amount of weight that I was carrying that I did not even realize until I left that position. It is crushing. It is a very difficult job. Kudos to both Lisa and Melissa here. I empathize with everyone that's in those roles now.
With that, thank you for coming on the Public Sector Show by Tech Tables. I appreciate you all coming on.
Awesome.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from techtables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by Tech Tables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves.